Hi everyone, my name's Leslie Wobble. I'm an entrepreneur, a developer, and an artist. In general, that's a lot of descriptions for basically saying I'm going to do what I like doing. And today I want to take you on to a developer's journey on developing a project from scratch and kind of the story behind that. So this is kind of a vlog or pseudo journal. Um, and for our idea, we're going to be classifying nature sounds. So essentially, I got, let's move over here, Joe, or here, Joe, oh, there we go. Joseph Guido is one of my buddies from over Discord and who I knew through a couple friends who wants to work on this idea. I said, hey, that's really cool. I'll come check it out. So we're going to take a look at his Google Docs and we're going to talk about the first approach to this problem and develop a proof of concept. So Joe took the time to write out his vision or his idea for us here. And simply what this idea is, you go outside, you take out your phone, record 10 seconds or audio samples of sounds around you. Specifically, let's say bird sounds. And then this app returns the analysis of insects sounds. Joe's very technical and he's done something that I've loved a lot is that when you think of an idea of your app or your product, right, you want to take a big optimistic view of what that is. And then you want to break that down into parts. Well, if we wanted to do machine learning on nature sounds or audio, we're going to need a database. So Joe has already taken time to look for data to do this type of work. And in general, we're stuck at the first problem where essentially we don't have a whole lot of audio data to play around with. And that we need to start building a way to collect that data somehow, like an app or software. The app will record that sound that they're hearing, hopefully. Which, in general, this is a big problem. So we're going to kind of break down this problem. And I want to take you over to my notepad where essentially we're going to talk about the basics and where my head kind of went with this idea and how we want to develop this app. Now, in the most simplistic way, the biggest part of this is how are you going to get the data from an app or a desktop application or into essentially a database where we can write code that interacts with the database to collect, filter, search, and do any type of analysis. And by analysis, I mean you're taking data, you're labeling data, and also throwing it through algorithms. We're going to do some simplistic thinking on where I'm going to start with this app. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to make a React front end and develop everything in native. Basically, native allows you to write JavaScript code in a phone app where we can deploy it on an Android or iOS app without having any issues overall. And this can be easily kind of translated from a React app into native or vice versa because it's in its own ecosystem. And then my backend is going to be for development purposes a Python Flask server. The reason I'm choosing this is that simply from experience, and if we want to do analyze the data with machine learning or a deep learning model, and we want to deploy that model, we need to do it through Python. So I love a lot of the capabilities of scikit-learn. So that's where my thinking's at. And to begin this process, we really want to think about, okay, person downloads app. We want to define our user experience. They download the app. They open the app. And now the third thing they have to do is hold down a recording button. Now, not thinking about these first two steps, this will have to come later on because you have to think about the Google Play Store or the iOS iTunes downloads, however they do downloading apps now. I'm an Android user myself, so I only know the Google Play Store. And the look of the app and CSS and the vision. One thing that I'm going to talk to Joe about later is, what do we call this? What's the name of it? But essentially, I'm going to think about the technical aspect or the full stack of the front end to the back end. So if we're going to doodle out kind of our idea. So this is the phone app, and we want to hold the button down here. The person presses hold right here. And it starts an event where we're going to record. This is going to be my pseudocode. User button trigger. Start record. We need to look for a JavaScript library, which I haven't researched yet, where we're going to hold down and translate phone audio into, let's say, MP3 format. Okay. And then our third step, we need to send off a web request. Request for upload. So in the most simplistic way, our web app could obviously have a nav bar up here. But when I want it to be very easy for the user. You want to minimize the steps it takes for your user to use your application. I don't want to log in. I don't want to do this. This will simply record as a guest. User verification and authentication will come later. All I'm doing is developing the baseline of, we're going to essentially take audio database. Okay, and then this will come back to our front end, essentially. And we can do analysis. What I'm essentially is developing is the workflow, or create, retrieve, update, and delete functionalities of our app. And all I want to develop is uploading audio to the database as a simplistic feature. So what I'm talking about web requesting is that we have a front end here. And when our user holds down, somehow we'll have a library to access maybe the hardware on the phone. Hopefully there's a JavaScript library that takes the audio and we can convert it to MP3. And when I talk about web requesting, is that your front end is actually server software that is delivering HTML and CSS to the user. Whatever the color is on the front end, that is that experience. And this is like a client-side server. And essentially, when I send a web request, we need to send it to our backend. And this is just general pseudocode of the steps I want to follow of what's happening. So on our backend, since we have a Flask app server, we'll have an endpoint called /upload audio. So essentially, we'll have a request here. We'll have a JavaScript function that looks for this endpoint where essentially, we're looking for an IP address /upload audio. And when this is called, our MP3 format will be sent through maybe a web request package. And the reason why we want to attempt this is really to generate question marks of what's figured out and what the general design is. So we upload the audio, and somewhere in this process we check
we have to validate the request. Is it a post? Question mark. Is it audio? And then finally, insert into the database. All right. So, and then once it's updated, we need to send a request back. So, this is just the response that we would get, and we would send 200 response. Basically, we want to make sure that the front end hears the back end and says, yes, successful upload. And this is the general baseline of what this app really needs, is the ability for the user to upload audio. We'll have maybe some inputs of like, okay, I'm pretty sure inputs of like, okay, this is a cardinal of some kind. And then you have a submit button. This submit button essentially will trigger all this event logic to send off a web request to the back. Now, I want to go over about, this is essentially all these ideas going on inside your head or my head of like, how will this work? And this is generally like a proof of concept or roadmap, or you're just kind of developing the pseudo logic you might have to follow. A lot of people like to hack their way through without really drawing out the pseudo code. But it's really good to get this on paper or in a document of some kind and then come back to it later. Before I leave this, I want to talk about the back end in the next few minutes and mark up this on a lot of question marks. Like, for example, like, we need to ask ourselves, like, how does this look? Is this appealing? This is really related to like UI, UX design. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of skills in that. But we'll come to that problem when we come to it. I'm more concerned about creating this workflow and getting the audio into data. And our biggest question is, will there be a JavaScript library out there that takes the phone audio off my Android, or, for example, I can't spell Android very well, into MP3 format. And then we have a web request for upload. So we have to test this, unit test these web requests. And then after the backend is created, we're actually going to need to do models.py, and we might need like a compression function call. So essentially, I imagine that audio file is going to be very large, and maybe we do the compression on the client side first, or we do the compression on the back end, and then we insert into the database. So what this idea is called serialization, where we take your data and put it into a blob. It's just a binary large object. That's what that stands for, and deserialization. This is kind of just a way to make inserts into the database a lot simpler in organizing that data however we need to.
Okay, so now that we have everything installed, we also need to get our backend set up. So we're going to make a Python virtual environment. First, let's make a folder, class, nature, sounds, backend. All right. So we can do class, nature, sounds, backend. And now we can do Python dash make test dev So we're going to make a Python virtual environment to pip install all the required Python packages for the server. So that's done. We just do dev/script activate, and then we can do Flask. We can do pip install Flask. Pip install. I think it's better just to look it up instead of randomly typing and guessing. Flask. SQL Alchemy. Alright, so the server is up and we can then affect changes while this goes on. So alright, so I think we're going to get rid of the logo. We don't really need the logo here. We're just going to get rid of this. It's just a basic explanation of what is going on. App header. Okay. And then we want app CSS. So if we want to change the background to like white, for example, we can just do that. Oh, this should work. Yep, there it is. So I don't know if I want to implement a nav bar yet. We'll leave that out for now, but let's just get the basics down first. We need a component, essentially, and what a component is that we're going to make a folder here really quick. Is kind of the Russian doll system of React, where you're kind of like, okay, this is my app, and then inside the app is a bunch of components, and it's like code within code. So we're going to do a title for now. Title.js, and we can do a simple React component like this. That was React snippets. Snippets. That is when you kind of, I'll show you again. You do ARFCE. This is like a snippet of templated code that you can use that will auto-generate the code if you just type that little micro. So here we can just do a simple header, classify nature sounds, and then it won't show up here because we didn't call the component. So this is important, is that you want to call your component right there. So here we have ... component / title, so it's referencing this in the folder structure. Now we can call the component title right here. Oh, didn't like that. You attempted to falls outside. Oh yeah. Okay, sorry about that. This is where it needs to go. Let's see if it shows up. Okay, so the reason why it doesn't show up is because our color is white. So let's just do black. They're classified nature sounds. Okay, so that is how basic component kind of works in React. We're going to move on to doing the inputs on the audio. But we'll just keep it to 2 so it's readable. All right, so we need to type, we need to look up an audio type. So form submission audio. Or we'll do form type audio. Form tag HTML audio question mark. We have something called audio tag. Oh my god, that was very loud. Audio submission HTML.
What?
Yeah, what's up?
Did you find a tripod?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You get